Howdy, all you delicious people. I am here today to review Blade the Series, Episode 7 of Season 1. This episode, I think, is a little bit more focused on Blade, but almost could say that it is focused on Blade and Marcus, so there's kind of this toss-up. It seems like Krista isn't 100% stealing the show in this episode, but there is some things that she still has to do. So from the last episode, Blade was to detonate the spot of which that Blade was to take Vanessa from, and we are to assess or assume, oh, well, I guess Chase is probably dead, right? No, we're gonna find out that Chase actually looks like some barbecued chicken or some baby back ribs or something in this episode, and Marcus is to consistently be watching over her as she is to try to heal from her severish injury of being burnt to a crisp. Really extra crispy for Chase. Chase is to also deal with some vampire stuff, or Marcus is to go and deal with some vampire stuff. Not Chase. Chase is to just recover. Marcus is to go and do some like political stuff with some other vampires because they have some other vampires that are the House of the Mayans. If I'm even saying that correctly. They are to have found out some information, and so now they have to do some negotiating. Blade has to go and try to take Vanessa to a safe house, and it's kind of interesting because with this episode, Blade is starting to dream about his mother. And I don't know if they're trying to retcon what had happened to his mother in this episode, or maybe they're just having a dream sequence to maybe help understand Blade's mother a little bit more or something. But like these dream sequences are actually interesting, and maybe getting Blade to just kind of like forget about his past and focus on his present. Because really, everyone that he had been connected to from his past is no longer gone, so he just needs to move on and like stop holding everything from the past to now affect his present. So Krista is to eventually try and basically intercept Blade, and like it's kind of like this tug of war of like, well, like I want this thing from Vanessa, well I want this thing from Vanessa, and so like they gotta see like how much that they could actually take from this pregnant lady uh of the thing that Vanessa has. And really that I think for a most of this talking in almost a cryptic like way, that's a bulk of what really actually just happens in this episode. Kind of like it kind of feels like it kind of feels like this episode kind of like slowed down compared to the other one. Oh, we also have Ray Collins, who is back in this episode, the detective that was kind of following Boone's cases and trying to put pieces together. It seems that uh, Collins is putting yet another previous case of Boone's together, and really Collins is just talking to his superior, and it's getting to the point where Collins, I think, is just kind of like, I don't know really what I'm getting out of this. Like, I think everything is kind of telling me that something does not make sense here. And we start to get a little bit of backstory of seemingly Collins. And that's the thing that I liked about this was like, okay, so this guy is just not a nothing character. It seems like they're trying to help us understand this character a little bit more, and eventually that will come, I'm assuming, through probably other episodes. But with that said, I think since I've reached that 5 minute marker of talking about this show, cryptically, let's get into spoilers about the show. Let's go ahead and crack this out without a doubt because it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time I'm going to spoil this movie or show because it is a show. Let's go into it. So, really, the most thing that I honestly want to care about the most is probably the Blade stuff. Plus, also, I think if I get the Blade stuff done, then I can come back for the Marcus and for the Krista stuff. Because eventually the Krista stuff ties into the Blade stuff. So we'll focus on Blade. So Blade is to with Vanessa go on a train to try to make their way to Paris to take this girl to some safe house doctor to see what bun is in her oven. To really understand what the heck that this thing is that she's carrying around. So Vanessa is to go on this train with Blade, and she is to scream for help, and Blade is to have to knock her out by hitting her, so that way, like, she will stop screaming for help. Blade looks to see if anybody's coming, and no one is. So Blade starts to rest, and all of a sudden, he is back in his past because this kind of felt very disorienting. Speaking of disorienting, I probably should have mentioned that this episode bizarrely has strobe lighting, so if anybody is to get sick from that, that tends to happen quite a bit in this episode, like once or twice in this episode. Because eventually Krista is to. I'm going to have an itch on my arm here. I'm going to have to pause here. Krista is to have like the when she's looking at the portrait that she's looking at, like eventually they go into flashbacks with her, and that's where the strobe lighting happens, and it's kind of like for some people that might get sick with that. Just letting you be aware of that. And then there's also a sequence where Krista is to fire off some shots, and that might be considered like strobe lighting, but it's not really. But if anything, the flashback thing kind of causes that. But anyways, so, and I apologize for, like, more than likely, if anybody's going to go and watch this movie, like, hey, strobe lighting or whatever, or show, I mean, and get, like, hit with strobe lighting, and I didn't mention it, I apologize, but I'm saying it now. So, so, Blade is having this dream that he is back in his home, I guess, with his supposed father and his mother. Like, I guess his second father, because his real biological father was a vampire. So Blade is to go strolling through his house, and then all of a sudden his mother is to mention to Blade, hey, hey, Eric, take your shoes off because we don't want you tracking blood in here. Blade is to look down on his boots, and they are covered with blood. And all of a sudden, we are to see Blade's mother turn to him, and she has blood coming down from her neck. And so Blade's mother is telling Blade that he needs to kill Vanessa, and she will show him how to do so. And so Vanessa takes Blade's hand and kind of shoves this blade into her chest, and Blade is to wake up. So Vanessa is to eventually wake up, and she needs to go to the bathroom. So Blade takes her to the bathroom and is start to seeing like people going back and forth through this train. and Blade is assessing or assuming any number of these people could be vampires, and surefire enough, they are. So Blade is to start getting attacked by these passengers, and it's kind of an interesting sequence. It's kind of like a small spot to fight these people in, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So Blade eventually is to fight off these people, and bizarrely, these are like vampires that are like climbing on top of the wall of this train, and we also seem to have like this one vampire who's like flying into Blade, where this girl has to just kind of like seemingly float into the air, bizarrely, for Blade to try to take her down. But Vanessa kind of comes in and helps Blade and kills one of them. So Vanessa goes and does her business and then eventually comes back. So Vanessa is telling Blade, well, I guess we're going to need an alternate way to get to Paris. So we just cut to them going through this sewer system. And so Blade is kind of asking, like, Vanessa, like, why she did it. And Vanessa's like, well, like, dude, I had so many bills I had to pay. Like, it was so easy. And this doctor is somebody that I knew. And so, like, I just decided, like, well, hey, like, why not go for it? Why, like, if it's going to help me in the long run, like, pay off bills or whatever, like, it was just easy money. So for her, like, she just thought it was the best thing to do. So, so let's put a pin in that and let's get to the Marcus stuff. So Marcus, or no, wait, we'll probably have to get to the Krista, then Marcus, then more Marcus stuff. So Krista is going and is at this art studio where it seems that there have been previous military people that have done artwork. It seems that Krista asked one of the military guys about one of these paintings, and the guy had mentioned that this guy had evidently given his life numerous days after painting this. So Krista, while looking at this painting, is getting flashbacks from her military experience. But, like, I don't know what exactly this painting is doing for her because she keeps looking at it. She's really intrigued about it. So, so Krista is going through this art gallery to be grabbed by her family member. I think this family member is to call Krista his niece, so I think it's not like her father. So Krista is to talk with this family member, and he is to mention to her, like, hey, like, you know what, like maybe you should like kind of like put a pin in what you're doing with this whole Marcus guy and everything that you're doing here, because maybe you need to go back and much more focus on your family. Because with Zach out of the picture and now you seemingly missing, and Chris is like, dude, I'm not missing. I'm right here. They're like, you're talking to me, so I'm technically not missing. And so this guy cuts the mustard, or gets the important part that the reason why this guy really went and tried to find Krista was because her mother was actually ill, was actually sick. And so Krista's like, oh, okay, but the conversation that Krista is to have with her family member is to get interrupted by Marcus, who desperately needs Krista to go with him because Chase is now back, but she's a crispy critter. So Marcus is to be at the bedside of Chase in her recovery. So Krista is to go back to see her family member at this hospital to see how her mother's doing. And it seems that Krista's mother needs a transplant of some kind, and Krista cannot deliver that because she is now a vampire. And because this family member who had talked to her at the art gallery is now talking to her here, is like, why can't you help out your mother? Like, if anything, like, you should be actually the perfect candidate to help her out. And why do you feel like you can't? And so Krista's like, well, it's because like I don't have the right thing that my mother needs. And like, bull, like what? Are you like on drugs? Are you on like do you have hepatitis or something? Like, there's obviously some reason that you're not going to help her. It's like, well, probably can't help her because if she gave her anything, her mother would turn into a vampire, and what good does that do? So Krista cannot help her mother, and so Krista is to basically just walk off and just be like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. Because vampire, but I won't tell you that. So, so we have, let's go into the Ray Collins stuff because that'll be easy to just kind of wrap up for that character. So Ray Collins is to go and investigate the whole last sighting of Boone, where Boone was in that other house to try to spill information to them about the Mayans who had been experimented on. And so Ray is to go into that building that a vampire was dusted and Boone was there. So Collins goes and takes a sample of this kind of vampire ash and compares it to another sample of vampire ash that he had seen previously. So Collins is making the consensus that, and he calls his superior and makes the consensus that it seems that he is chasing after a monster, and so his superior, which is Sorensen, is to basically tell Collins like, you know what, maybe you came back at the wrong time with all this. Like, maybe we brought you in here too soon. Maybe you need to go to seek out therapy or you need to see someone because like I just don't think that you're ready to come back yet. And Collins is like, dude, I'm ready. Like, I'm fine. Like, I'm raring to go. So like Collins is kind of bickering with his superior, but it seems like Collins is going to continue to do this case. So that wraps up basically a bulk of what happens with Collins. That's about all he really does. Basically pointless to have this guy do any of this, but it's just chasing after Boone, and I guess they have to have the human side of this because Krista is not human. So Marcus is to go and forcibly need to talk to Charlotte because Marcus can't spend all his time on the bedside of Chase. So Marcus goes to Charlotte, and Charlotte is asking every single thing that Marcus has had anyone do. It seems that Charlotte is completely unaware of what all is going on, so Marcus is basically giving her an update of every single thing. So Charlotte is to tell Marcus that Dominic wants a word with Marcus because of the whole him hearing about the Mayans who have been experimented on via the House of Chthon. So Marcus is to go with Charlotte to speak with Dominic, and they go into this kind of like dome like environment which Marcus kind of relates it to being like the gladiator age or the gladiator days, where people used to battle for sport and whatever. Because I guess he was during the time period of the Romans. Like they tend to try to make it seem like in these episodes that these vampires are actually much older than they are. But it just, I don't know, it just kind of seems goofy. It just kind of seems forced to do that, but anyways. So Marcus is talking to Dominic, and Dominic basically wants them and their house to be completely accepted back into the fold and to be welcomed back with open arms. And because this House of Armayan had before tried to kill some other vampires, but they're like, well, hey, like you technically experimented on us, so all is forgiven and even is even. So we should be accepted back into the fold with open arms, kind of thing. So we have them going like, you know what, we'll think it over. Like, well, we'll have our people call your people. And Marcus is to ask Dominic how exactly he found out this information. And so we have Dominic come and bring out Sans, the experimented vampire that was on from earlier seasons, that he took Blade and Shen out to go and kill away all these vampires that were heavily experimented on, and like the guy that was to be at the casino, and Blade was to grab him to kind of try to get him for information. So Sans comes out and tells that he honestly just kind of hates all of these people because he is kind of sick of the whole chess game that they are to play, that that they kind of force their pawns so much so to do so many things that like that honestly pawns of which that they don't care about, and like it'll lead to so many deaths and so many whatever, but it doesn't matter, they can just get more pawns. So one person kind of turns to just say, hey, are we gonna kill Sans? And Dominic is like, no, like if anything, he's given us information, so we'll let him go. So Dominic says his piece, Sans says his piece, and so they all go their separate ways. For really just Marcus to go back to Chase and watch over her as she is to change from Kentucky Fried Chicken to eventually like a lesser Kentucky Fried Chicken looking character. So now a lot of people are probably going to get hungry during this review, or also get like during this review. It's all good. A lot of people might just want some of that sweet, delicious chicken. Mwah, finger looking good. And some people might just be like, "Yeah, I don't want any more. I don't want no chicken." Like, good thing I like was eating chicken while I was watching this review, because some people might do that. So, uh, so now let's go back into the Blade stuff that I put a pen in. Let's put that pen back out. So, uh, Blade is to take Vanessa to this doctor, and he is to do an ultrasound on her belly, and we are to find out that there's not an actual baby inside this woman's chest. So I'm like, what? Is she just holding water? Like, is she like is the baby just invisible? Is the baby like is this woman holding like the Invisible Man? Like, what's going on here? Is there a joke to this? What's going on? Where is the punchline? So the doctor is to tell Blade that, like, she is basically holding nothing. She's basically just holding a thing of liquid. Okay? And so Marcus is to tell Krista that she needs to go to Berlin, and then instead Krista then heads to Paris with a vampire crew of her own to make it to Blade to get this stuff that was inside this woman's belly, which looks just kind of like blood or whatever the heck thing that just looks just goofy looking. Like, it looks like the Ghostbusters 2 thing of slime. Like, I don't know. Like, it looks weird to me. Like, it looks like they just kind of, like, randomly, like, had some, like, remains of something. So they're like, we'll just put that in here and it just is whatever it needs to be. So, Krista, with her men, is going to try and get at Blade, but Krista goes and kills every single one of these military guys that she's with. It seems that one guy had mentioned, like, how far long ago that he had been doing battles, and it seems like this guy had chosen both sides and of this war that he was in. And so I think it was like Gettysburg or something, and Chris is like, "Oh, that far back? Well, it's great because you're all gonna die right now." And so Krista kills all of these men and then heads into uh, the spot where Vanessa is being held, and is to have Krista mention, like, to the doctor, it's like, well, yeah, like, I'm supposed to kill you and take whatever is left of Vanessa, kill Blade, and blah 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 blah. And Krista walks in there. Blade is to show up, and Krista's like, well, yeah, that's what they told me to do, but that's not what exactly I'm going to do. So Krista gets most of this sample of what Vanessa was to have, uh, but Blade is to get a small sample. So Krista is to get the big portion of what Vanessa had inside of her, but Blade gets a sample of it. He gets a bite-sized bowl of ugliness. So Krista is to just go off and just be like, Dad, tra la 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 la. Like, I guess I have to go and send this to Marcus. But this time around, Krista is thinking smart. And she has to tell Blade, you know what? Like, I think Marcus is going to start getting suspicious if every single time that every single other person going against Blade is going to get killed, and then I'm just going to get, like, off, like, scot free without a scratch in the world. So Blade has his sword come out, and so Krista is to hand the sample to Marcus, and she is to have a scratch over her eye. And so Marcus gives her this sample, and Krista is to walk off, and Marcus is to be like, wait, Krista, you know what? Like, you've done great work. If anything, like, I'm seeing some real, like, potential for your future here. And Krista's like, well, great. And so she walks off to go to medical so that way she can get her eye checked and taken care of. So really, I think for a bulk of this, I've kind of covered a bulk of this episode. Really, at the tail end of it, we have Blade, who is going and doing his uh like, his meditation, and he is to pull out a picture of his mother, and he is to burn the picture of his mother, I guess, to just try to forget his past, because all that matters is what is going on right now. So I think that does cover everything in this episode for the most point. There might have been a thing here or there that I misplaced or whichever, but like, I thought that this episode was just like it was filler, but like it wasn't like it wasn't like a bad filler. Like there's some times where like a show gets nowhere or does nothing. Like it seems like there were bits and pieces here that I could be happy about. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about this episode. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.